In this tutorial, I want to talk about the feature built into Title Studio that allows the creation of animated text. There are presets available using the FX browser that allow quick and easy text animation, but using these won't give you the knowledge of how they work. Stick with me and we'll delve into the mechanism of this feature so that you may fully configure your animated text if you so wish. I'm using Title Studio within Continuum 2022. Your UI may be different. For this tutorial, I'm using the standalone version of Title Studio. On the timeline, I have two shape track entries. One is a sample text string, the other is a single letter. I'm going to start with the text string, so I'll hide the single letter entry. The Type On feature is accessed by selecting the Type On entry in the Controls window when the texture track is selected. It's not my intention to describe each of these parameters in great detail. I think it would be less tedious if I demonstrated their individual and sometimes combined effect on the selected text entry. Having said that, there are two parameters that need to be established initially. These are the Apply To and Order parameters. You use the Apply To drop-down list to specify whether the animation will apply to each letter, each word, or each line. I'll refer to these as text elements in this tutorial. The Order drop-down list simply specifies the direction of the animation through the text element. The three options available, forward, reverse and random, are self-explanatory. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'll leave both these settings in their default state. I'll also leave a description of the Always Visible feature until later. To make a start, I must initialize the animation. This is done using the Text Type On parameter. You'll notice that it's the only parameter that has an interpolation mode box, which means it's the only parameter that can be keyframed. Let's say that I want to progress the animation from the first text element to the last during the full timeline. With the CTI at the beginning of the timeline, I need to enter 0. I must then change the interpolation mode to allow animation. I'll set it to linear. I'll now set the CTI to the end of the timeline, confirm that the parameter value is 100, and set the interpolation mode to hold. By carrying out these few simple steps, I've created a basic Type On effect applied to the sample text string. The time it takes to reveal each text element is called the reveal time and is determined by the reveal time parameter. Its default value is 100, but can be as high as 12,800. The higher the value, the faster is the reveal time. By the way, if you hover the mouse pointer over a parameter value, a tooltip appears suggesting the valid range of the parameter. My advice is, don't take this as gospel. Some parameters sometimes show a valid range that's incorrect. A case in point is the reveal time parameter. The tooltips sometimes show an invalid range. I found that if an invalid range is displayed, selecting another window, then returning to the Type On window, the valid range will show the correct one. For this particular parameter, the true valid range is 0 to 12,800. For a basic Type On effect, the next parameter, acceleration, doesn't do anything. To show its effect on the text string, I need to add another effect. I could choose any of the effect parameters, but for this purpose I'll choose the Shift X parameter. This will cause the text elements to start animating at a point shifted from their positions in the X-plane, determined by the value entered into this parameter. For a project resolution setting of 1920 by 1080, the Shift X parameter valid range is -2880 to 2880. For other resolutions, the valid upper and lower limits are equal to 1.5 times the horizontal resolution. A negative Shift X value will cause a shift left and a positive number a shift right. The larger the number, the more the shift. A demonstration will make this clearer. You can see now that the text elements start appearing shifted to the right of their natural positions. The rate of animation is determined by the acceleration parameter. As this is a positive number, the elements accelerate into their final positions. Unfortunately, with a text string, the acceleration isn't apparent. To better demonstrate this, I'll hide this entry and reveal the single character entry. You can see that the animation starts slowly, then builds up speed until the end. This time, with a negative number, the element decelerates into its final position. So that's the acceleration and shift X parameters covered. Let's now look at the overshoot parameter. This parameter has a valid range of -1000 to +1000 and causes a text element to overshoot its final position, then return. I'll just show what happens with a value of, say, 50. You can see that it overshoots slightly, then returns. The amount of overshoot depends on the value. If I enter 10, you can see the difference. The overshoot changes with values greater than 100. Multiples of 100 causes multiple overshoots. For example, 200 causes 2 overshoots, 400 causes 4 overshoots, and so on. The final overshoot is determined by the amount the value is above the 100 boundaries. Now let's look at the decay parameter, which has a valid range of 0 to 100. This is used with the overshoot parameter and determines how much damping there is in the overshoot. 0 produces minimum damping, which we've already seen. 100 produces maximum damping, resulting in only one overshoot, irrespective of the value of the overshoot parameter. There is one more parameter in this section that doesn't appear with extruded text, but does appear with flat text. That is the fade parameter. This has a valid range of 0 to 100 and causes the text element to fade in as the animation progresses. A value of 0 produces maximum fade and 100 produces no fade. The remainder of the parameters modify the animation in various ways. I've already shown how the Shift X parameter does this. The Shift Y parameter modifies in a similar way, but in the vertical plane. The valid range, similar to the Shift X parameter, is determined by the vertical resolution multiplied by 1.5. The Scale X and Scale Y parameters do exactly that. They scale the text elements according to the parameter values at the start of the effect. The scale is then animated, finishing at 100% when the text element reaches its final position. As you can see, these parameters can produce some interesting results. Now we come to the three rotational parameters: tumble, spin and rotate. As expected, these parameter values are in arc degrees, so have a range of between 0 and 360 degrees. At the side of the parameter value is a modifier which allows values greater than 360 to be entered. Negative values are also accepted. When entering values greater than 360, you need to be aware that if you need to change the parameter value back to 0 degrees, returning the main value to 0 won't do it. You must also change the modifier value to 0. We look at each parameter in turn, starting with tumble. To demonstrate, I'm going to return to the single character entry. Now I'll set the tumble parameter to 90. You can see that the letter appears to rise to the vertical position from lying on its back. I say appears because that's not in fact what happens. The best way to show this is to change the text to extruded and tip the scene forward. Now when I play the animation, you'll see that the tipping or tumble of the letter is an illusion. It simply grows vertically, creating the illusion. I can reinforce this by changing the scene tumble to 90. Essentially looking down on the character from above. The same is true of the spin parameter. The letter grows horizontally, creating the illusion of spinning. The rotate parameter actually does rotate the letter. I'll change the scene tumble slightly to show this better. The skew X and skew Y parameters simply skew each text element, either horizontally or vertically during the animation. As with other effects, the skew at the start of the animation is determined by the parameter value. The skew then gradually decreases until the animation is complete, when the skew is 0. I'm not going to deal with the jitter parameters, simply because I haven't discovered yet how they affect the text elements. If anyone can enlighten me on this, I'd be grateful for any comments. There's one option I haven't dealt with yet, and that's the always visible checkbox. As you can see, with this parameter enabled, some interesting results can be achieved. The type-on effect can be combined with the path effect to create the typing of letters on a curved path. I've incorporated this into my new opening logo sequence. The type-on effect can also be used to create easy-to-achieve lower thirds. This is one I created quite quickly. It uses the type on effect applied to the line to animate the text element onto the screen from off the screen on the left. I've shrunk the shape track entry timeline down to a suitable period for the lower third display. I've also adjusted this timeline so that it sits in the middle. It has just two keyframes, one to specify the animate on period end, and the other to specify the animate off period start. I set the acceleration to -100 for maximum deceleration and applied a negative horizontal skew of 20 degrees to enhance the movement. I also used the backdrop option to create the text background. For simplicity, I've used the effect with an image on the Title Studio timeline. Of course, in practice, you would apply the effect to a video event on your NLE timeline. When you do this, remember to select Composite over Background for the preview background setting. The type on effect is one of the many effects available natively, which makes Title Studio an extremely powerful and versatile titling application. With a little imagination and some patience, your titles and lower thirds can become interesting and eye-catching, as well as being informative. Join me if you can for my next episode, when I'll be exploring more of Title Studio's many features. Until then, bye for now.